Grand Rising. There are compounds and heavy metals and soft metals and so on that the body cannot naturally get rid of by itself, right? What does that mean? It means that you will accumulate those over time, and the toxicity compounds, which creates immense health problems down the line. And I'm not just talking about, gut issues or skin issues or, headaches, like serious health problems down the line. And the problem is that the majority of Western medicine doctors and practitioners have no clue. They have no clue about this. What do? They take your blood sample here and there, they test for this and that, and then they say, okay, yeah, there's nothing in there, you're fine, you're in the healthy range of stuff, right? Which, first of all, is ridiculous, because these ranges are absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if you would, let's say, compare yourself to, a person that's fat and overweight, and they're already touching into the normal healthy range, then you already know, even with that, that these ranges, they suck, right? That's just one of the examples, but there's so many different examples for that. But what I'm trying to say here is that you cannot expect a human that has been trained by the system to think outside of the system. It's very difficult to do. And there's only a small percentage of these humans that actually think outside the box, And so, if you come across one of these, then you will see that everything they do is differently from the stuff that they learned in university and in their first years of practice, right? Because it's simply the only way to do that, right? Because you have to kind of forget most of what you've been taught and start from scratch, right? And luckily now we have the internet, and luckily now there are ways to basically study and learn from humans around the world, right? So that means that new information can travel faster. And let's say during the time that my father, for example, was studying, this was not the case, right? You would have had to find a book and find this article and be kind of lucky to come across it to be able to indulge in a new thought process and to be able to come across a new way of thinking. And then what needs to happen before that? The situation needs to happen that they actually want to look for something else. They want to look for a different solution, because why would they? They think they've been taught by the best university in the country. They think they've been taught by experts. They think they've been taught by all these people that spent their whole life, with this certain topic. And so why would they even question their ability to, practice discernment within their field of expertise? Because they are the expert, right? They've got all the stamps, they've got all the glorification and so on and so forth, right? So a lot needs to happen for someone to actually be able to get to this point where they start to question what they've actually been taught, right? And then what happens is that you're at this crossroads where you're basically questioning, or you're basically thinking about throwing all these last 10-15 years away, in a sense, and starting from scratch, which means you would have a period of low income, you have this period of uncertainty, you have this period of not knowing if this is even the right path, because you are working against, the majority of your peers, right? And, you can see how difficult it is for someone that's stuck within that system. Let's use the Western medical system as the example here. How difficult it is for them to actually break free from these old patterns, from these old thought processes, from this old way of practicing medicine. You know, you have a symptom, here's the pill, right? Let's treat the symptom. Let's not look for the root. It costs too much, it takes too much time, and it's way too weary, and like the patient actually has to do some work, right? Which most patients are not willing to do. So it's a win-win. The patient gets a pill, they can keep on living their shitty lifestyle, and they feel better for a while, and then they will come back anyways with a stronger problem, and so on and so forth, right? So it's a two-way street here, and there's always two to tango. But what I was lucky in is that my dad, for example, would always show me two sides, right? He would always show me the natural approach, and he would always explain to me the regular Western medicine approach that would be possible here, right? And there are always two choices, most of the case. In most cases, you can choose the one or the other route. Sometimes, I'm not saying, and I'm not denying that, sometimes you have to, grab the hardcore shit, and that's that. That's especially in cases where, something major is going on right now, and you need to be quick, and you don't have the time to actually work with something that needs a bit more, time to actually work through, right? So I'm not saying an antibiotic doesn't have a place. I'm not saying that at all. I just gave my son a couple weeks ago, I gave him an antibiotic for his eye. We tried the natural route for like 2 weeks or 10 days, and then it got better and it came back. So there's certain decisions that you have to make within this threshold that you have, but generally speaking, there's always one natural approach to the same issue and one regular Western medicine approach that you can take, right? So that's how I grew up. That's, I grew up around homeopathy. I grew up around Steiner. I was in a Waldorf kindergarten myself. I was also in a regular kindergarten myself. I went down the regular school system route later on. I went to university, all that, BS, whatever, right? But I'm not saying there isn't a place for university, because there is for certain subjects, but not